and then support. So, you know, I gave him one magic attack. Most of the support guys have, you know, a little bit of a certain attack just to kind of give them something. But really, you just kind of, they're low mana cost, and you stick them somewhere in your team to either, you know, give buffs or debuffs or whatever it is. And they so far in my little bit of play testing, they, you know, can really change battles just by sticking that 3 mana guy in there to just, even if he doesn't do any damage himself, the abilities that they have can really affect the tides of the battle.
So we had a little bit of a kerfuffle in the general chat with somebody that was concerned that there's just an AI element that plays into this. Is there really any AI in this game? Can we walk through a little bit of the rules of how this plays, and just maybe I should go start back sort of more with the individual rules so people can see the stats here. Whoops, and they can see the stats, and they can see like all of this is going to be released maybe today or maybe tomorrow, maybe it's this week or so. It's kind of here in the next couple days, but you know, you guys are going to be able to see this relatively quickly. But I'm hoping that we can kind of, maybe I should go back through, because I don't think we done a talk where we kind of go through all the individual rules that are part of this?
I haven't done that talk, so if you haven't either, then I guess not.
Yeah, can we start there, and then we can kind of come back, and I know that a lot of people are very excited to see these stats, and maybe I'll just kind of scroll through some of these a little bit so that people can see stuff. But, you know, you can see the stats that are coming. You can see some of the different abilities and get a sense, to some extent, of the flavor that he's talking about, how these things could have a different role within the game. So I'm almost done kind of scrolling here quickly so that people could take screenshots and look on their own later and do that sort of thing. Hey, some of the summoners have abilities, too. Do you want to talk through a little bit about what those summoner abilities are doing?
Yeah, sure. The summoners currently don't have any abilities, and that doesn't necessarily mean that in the future, you know, they won't. But the summoners just add or subtract stat points. So in the case of Selenia Sky that you're looking at there, she adds, you know, currently planned to add 1 ranged attack and 1 speed to all the members, all the monsters on her team. And that stays static, you know, regardless of her level. The level, as we discussed, you know, just limits what monsters she can summon. So if you put Selenia Sky in your deck, all your monsters that have a ranged attack get +1 ranged attack, and all your monsters get +1 speed.
What about some of our other summoners? So we have Lyanna. She's going to go add 1 health. What do we have? Let's start up at the top here. So Malric is giving us a melee boost and a speed boost. We have Ulrich that's bringing us a +1 magic attack. Now that feels kind of kick-ass to me.
Yeah, it's kick-ass and it's not at the same time, because not a lot of monsters actually have magic attack, and they're the only ones that will be, you know, that will get a bonus. So that's why I initially set him as 2 mana as compared to the other summoners, because you know, it's a stat boost that only applies to 1 or potentially 2 monsters in the deck, though it is, you know, significant. So we'll see. That's, you know, the balancing of the summoners is going to be important.
Well, and that's for now, right? I mean, in the not, you know, I'm assuming that by the end of the year we'll have more monsters that we release. Do you think that's a fair timeline for us?
Oh yeah, I would very much hope so.
Yeah. So hopefully not only will we see other summoners, but other monsters, and some of those monsters will, on the blue team, will have some magic attack powers. But looks like Tyrus is adding +1 armor. That actually seems like a pretty big deal because of the way that armor works. So that seems like a good buff.
It's a really big deal, yeah. So again, you know, and I should mention very clearly that all these stats are just an initial pass, and you know, we'll be doing our own internal play testing, and then once it's launched, we'll have a period of like alpha testing, public alpha testing for the fighting, where we'll adjust things to make sure the game is balanced, right? So please note that all these stats are subject to change, and I don't hopefully no one gets all upset and complains that once the stats are released, they went out and spent $10,000 leveling up certain cards only to find out they got nerfed later. I mean, that is going to happen if things are unbalanced, because if the game isn't balanced, if it's one combination of cards wins too often, it's just not going to be fun. So the value of cards will overall decrease if that's the case. So that's kind of the number one priority, is to have a well balanced game.
All right, so Rondon asked a question of are we going to allow people to play for free? How are we going to handle free? What's free? What isn't free? What's that current plan look like?
Yeah, I could also ask you the same thing. I think as our plans of now, you would need to at least purchase the starter pack to play. I don't know. We could think about having some free options, but everything's open.
Okay. I mean, we have the main game that we have to build first, and then we can start thinking about like I don't know, maybe even opening up the test site so people can have high level decks or low level decks, or sort of like put together teams and see what that sort of thing looks like. But some of that I also think will come through, like, not everything that, like, part of the joy of this being a blockchain game is that Steem Monsters doesn't have to invent everything. I mean, if there's a giant need in the marketplace, that other groups can kind of come in here and create parts of this and generate web traffic and generate people there. And I saw recently we started making it so that other groups could sell cards through their websites. So, if people are building components that really help this community, that the very least they could go sell cards and get portions of card sales returned to them. And it seems like that is an actual healthy revenue source already for some.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. Definitely want to encourage other sites to promote and sell Steem Monsters. So we're gonna, do whatever we can to support that. And another thing, as far as whether it's free or not, I mean, one big thing has to do also with Steam account creation. So obviously that costs money, and it's really nice, to be able to give people a free Steam account with their starter pack purchase. So if we had, that was free to begin with, then we have to then switch what we do with Steam account creation, and that may very well be feasible, once Hard Fork 20 is released. So we'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a month away, and if we have, we might become one of the sites that really gets known for creating new accounts.
Yeah, I hope we do. I mean, regardless of Hard Fork 20.
Well, it makes it even easier for you and I if we're creating all these things for free rather than handing out 3 Steam every time that we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, but if we're selling, a starter pack for $10, I'm happy to give out free Steam. Totally worth it. So it's actually one of the big advantages we have over most sites, which are generally free to use and don't have any paid options. I mean, like, I have a few friends who've never done any crypto stuff at all. And they just go on, they put in their credit card, and boom, they have a Steam account, and they can play. And it's so much easier than any of the other account creation services I've seen.
Yeah, you either have to wait 3 weeks for Steemit, or you have to already own crypto, which typically means going through Coinbase to some other service to then being able to go create your Steam account, which for a normie is just... that's a lot of steps.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I mean, even if I have people that aren't interested in the game but just want to, pay to create a Steam account, I just send them to Steem Monsters because it's so easy. Yeah. Like, and you also get some cards if you want to use them later.
Or just sell your alphas later.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple different splinters. We got the red team, blue team, green team, the death team, the life team, and the dragon team. Um, Put in the names for them. Say what areas they're from. So we have the Phyrexians, who are the red team. They're from the Burning Lands. The blue team, which represents water, are the Asmarians from the Asmare Islands. You have the green team, which is the Liverians from Anumun. You have the death team, which are the Dark Eternals from the land of Mortis. The white team, or the life team, that's the Chimeans from Chimeria. And then you have the dragon purple team, which are the Gloridax, and they're from Draknaka. So they're the different splinters. So for the people that don't know the backstory here, the world itself was whole. There was a cataclysmic event, which we will discover through the gameplay. And that cataclysmic event kind of split the world into all these different splinters. And now there's a prophecy that states that the splinters will come back to a whole planet, but we're a long ways from getting there. So we have this kind of, in some ways, dystopian reality where all these different splinters are fighting and dysfunctional, and hopefully one day we'll get them to be kind of functional and happy with one another. So let's see. We have teams. So I'm just kind of going through the rules post here, Yabo. So a team is comprised of cards consisting of one summoner and one or more cards. Each monster of a team must be different. Let's see. Summoners can only summon monsters that hail from the same splinter. So do you want to use? It's not quite as exciting as live radio from just reading this. Do you kind of want to talk through how the summoners work?
Yeah, definitely. This is an area that has led to some confusion. I tried to write it, to kind of explain the idea behind it, like from a story and world perspective. But I know it also can be a little confusing than just saying, this summoner can summon these monsters. So basically, if you have Zintar Mortalis as your summoner, then you can only choose, black monsters on that team. He can only summon those monsters. If you choose Liana, you can only do green monsters, Alric blue, etc. So it's very simple. It's just like in Hearthstone, how if you choose, the blue guy, I don't remember their names, you can only use the blue cards. And the only difference to that is Selenia Sky. Obviously, there's only 3 cards currently from the dragon splinter, so if she was limited to only that, it would kind of be not so great. So the idea from the storyline perspective is that the dragons are kind of, I guess not neutral is the word, but she can, they're kind of special, and they can, the dragon summoners can summon any monsters.
There is a restriction, though.
Right. Yeah. So while a dragon summoner can summon any monsters, she can't summon monsters from different splinters other than dragons at the same time on the same team. So if you pick Selenia, you can choose any of the 3 dragons, and then you choose one other splinter. So you could do the 3 dragons and some black monsters, or the 3 dragons and some blue monsters, but you can't do a dragon, a black, and a blue, and a green. You can't mix and match like that. And the reasoning, at least what we've written in the post, is that the other monsters won't fight together on the same team. And then also a question I've got is, you can create as many teams as you want. So you can create, and you can reuse the cards between teams. So then when you're ready to battle or enter a tournament, you just pick whichever team you've created that you want to enter, and you'll be able to save them through the website, so you don't have to repick your cards every time.
Yeah, I think that'll be a major convenience, and I think it'll be extra important when we start doing things like customization, and now you have items and you have spells. Like if I had to reinvent my whole deck every single time, that might be kind of a pain in the butt. It would sort of be better to have like my Lord of Darkness already decked out, and sort of it's easy to go put that together.
Yeah, and I had mentioned like neutral cards because Hearthstone and also Magic: The Gathering have certain cards that any color can use. I think that's something we might look into adding in the future. Also, some like cards without a color or without a splinter. Mercenaries, you might call them.
Yeah.
And those would might be, slight. They might have a few less stats as compared to a splinter specific card that's similar, just because they do have the added versatility of being able to be included on every team.
That seems like a great compromise. So, yeah, totally in support of that. Totally happy to go along with that and have that come into existence. I mean, we have a lot of card art. So getting a small Merc team up and running, hopefully we can go put that into the beta deck somewhere.
Yeah, I would like to do that. So we'll discuss and see what we can do there.
All right, so battles in Mana. Once you have a team, so again, that team is currently it's comprised of your summoner and your monster, or monsters. And how do I know how many of those I can have? So what's my limit there, and what is it? The limit always the same? Do I only get 2 monsters? Do I only get 5? How do I kind of figure that part out, Yaba?
Yeah, so that's what the mana is for. I mean, in other games, mana kind of works differently because you're actually, interacting or using it as the battle progresses. But here, the battles will have a cap, so it'll be a 20 mana battle, or something, and that can vary. I think we'll plan to do all sorts of different mana cap battles. So, just to give some variety and make sure it's, people aren't just playing the same teams all the time. You kind of have to always be on your toes and say, oh, this week, they're running 20 mana cap battles, and last week it was 15, and next week it's 30, and all that stuff. So, that's your only limit. So you can have, theoretically any number of monsters on your team, as long as the total mana cost of all the monsters and the summoner is less than or equal to the mana cap for the current battle.
So not everybody understands these games, so sometimes understanding the delta I think is important. How does mana work in something like Magic, or how does mana work with something like Hearthstone? And then take one more time and kind of walk us through how that's different here.
Sure. So I haven't played Magic for at least 20 years, so I'm not going to butcher that. But I'll talk about Hearthstone since I played that more recently. So the idea there is each turn within a game. Hearthstone is a real-time turn-based game. So I take a turn, my opponent takes a turn, I take a turn, etc. And you start with 1 mana on your first turn, then you get 2 mana on your next turn, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So you need some like 1 or 2 mana creatures so you can do something on your first few turns, and then you also need some larger mana creatures so you can do things later on in the game. This is kind of different than that, since this is it is an automatically played out game, so you don't actually take turns. So it's just simply every card has a number. You can see on Agro's screen there, Selenia Sky is 3 mana costs. So if it's a 20 mana battle, and you use Selenia Sky, then you have 17 mana left to pick your monsters. So you could do 1 10 mana monster and 1 7 mana monster, and you're done. That's a total of 20. You could do 5 3 mana monsters and a 2 mana monster, if my math is correct. And that's also 20. You could be a little under 20 if you want. You just can't be over. So you could have a 2 monster team versus a 5 monster team, but the stats on the cards are all given out based on the mana cost. So on average, a 6 mana cost monster should be about equal to 2 3 mana cost monsters. So the idea is that it'll be balanced, and it's comes down to your skill of choosing your cards and setting up your team.
Now, Jarvie brought up the point that this is the first game style. So is this the only game that we can make with these cards? Are we limited to this, or does the blockchain allow for something else?
I mean, the blockchain allows for whatever you can think up, really, in the sense that, it's just storing the information that you put on it. So it has no limitation there. And we have some other ideas to improve the game in the future. And we're doing a game jam, which, may lead to some really cool ideas. And we'd love to see anyone and everyone create stuff that's even better than what we've done.
Yeah, I mean, we are not only an alpha, but we are like the alpha company. I mean, I don't know. I guess Chibira is one of the next like game companies that's out here, but there's really only two gaming companies on Steam. We're kind of inventing this industry, and that's fun. I'm happy to do that. But you know, first off, I think our first approach at this is freaking awesome. Personally, I'm really stoked for this game. I get really frustrated by like how much luck is involved. With like Hearthstone, just all right. Did I get my level 2 mana card when I needed it? No. So now I'm dying. Okay, well that was fun. Or like, oh, I got my perfect combo one turn ahead of you, so I win. Like there were just parts of that, and like I wasn't a random player. I made it to like top 5% or something of all players. So I was pretty good, and it is a fun game. But once I realized that game is really about just having one mechanic that your entire deck is built around, that got boring for me. So
I mean, there's a balance there. I think people have to understand. It's sort of like poker in the sense that there is a lot of luck. So in an individual hand, the best skilled player in the world might lose to a relatively unskilled player. But over the course of many hands, the randomness averages out, and then the skilled players will win more. Hearthstone is the same way, so is Magic. I think specifically Hearthstone went overboard with the randomness, and a lot of people didn't like that. So, in our game, there is randomness involved. In fact, the last fight that we, teased out a couple days ago on the Steam It blog, I ran that fight a few times, and in some cases, the other team actually won. So I wanted to show that fight because those teams were actually really, really evenly matched to the point that it did come down to kind of the few random elements that were included there. So there is some randomness, but like you said, we're really trying to be as skill based as possible, because I just think that's what makes this cooler, And like you said, it does kind of suck to just get, even though if you're a much more skilled player, you just lose because the random elements aren't in your favor.
So let's talk next. So M1 has a good question of how can fixed stats have random. So let's go talk about what these stats are, and then how there could be any kind of random elements built into this.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing melee, ranged, and magic. Those are the 3 different attacks. Do you want to talk through what are the 3 different attack styles?
Sure. And the attacks don't specifically have randomness, but there are other things where randomness gets introduced. So the melee attack is basically kind of the up close and personal attack. So you have to be like the kind of tank, the front position on your team. The first monster can melee attack, unless an ability says otherwise. And melee attacks can miss. So that's a key area where randomness comes into play. And whether or not they miss depends on, certain abilities can make melee attacks have a higher chance of missing, and also the speed differential. So if the defender has a higher speed than the attacker, then the attacker has a chance of missing. I mean, you can literally think about it. The attacker tries to hit, and the defender is just faster and moves out of the way. And the bigger the differential, like if the attacker has 4 speed and the defender has 5, there's a small chance there of missing. But if the attacker has 1 speed and the defender has 6, then there's a big chance of missing because the defender is much faster. Same thing with ranged attacks. And then magic attack is different in two key ways. One is it can't miss, so there's no RNG there for the magic attack. And
wait, what's RNG? Will you explain that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, RNG is an acronym for random number generator. So it just means there's no randomness there. So if there's a magic attack, it will always hit the target, and there's no random luck element as to whether it hits or misses.
Okay. Now there's another kind of special feature about magic attack that's different than melee and ranged, and that has to do with armor and health. Do you want to explain that?
Sure, yeah. So the armor stat is like, we try to make it like literally how you would think of armor. It kind of protects your body and your health from getting hurt. So, if you have some armor and you get hit with a melee or ranged attack, it will deduct the armor. It will hurt or weaken and destroy eventually your armor. And then once your armor is destroyed, those attacks will start reducing your health. And one of the interesting things about armor, which I think makes the game, it just adds a really good element, I think, to the game, is that if you even have one armor, it will absorb an entire melee or ranged attack. So if a defender has only one armor and gets hit for a melee attack that does 5 damage, that damage will only take away that one armor. So the other 4 damage are sort of wasted in that scenario. And there's abilities that change how that works, which also adds, I think, to the gameplay there. But so magic attack is unique also because it ignores armor. So you kind of think like if you get hit with some type of magic attack, it doesn't matter if you're wearing full plate mail armor. Like it doesn't block that. So magic, magic goes straight to health.
Yeah, the D&D equivalent would be like magic missile. These things act like magic missile. They can't miss you. They always hit.
Right, and it's, you might think like, oh, that makes magic attack super powerful, but the idea is it's all balanced out. Like I mentioned, magic attack when we were talking about the stats before, is worth a lot. So monsters that have magic attack will have lower stats in other areas. So so you have to decide, do I go with a magic attack monster who might die much more easily or might be much slower and go last in the order? But he can always hit, and he can get around armor of the opponents. So if you think, a lot of people are playing high armor decks, you might go with high magic attack decks to counter that, and vice versa. So I think it's really cool to give cards stats and abilities that are really powerful, and then have them have specific weaknesses.
Yeah, min-maxing. It's the way to go. All right, so the next one is a big one. This is probably my personal favorite stat. This one is speed. Do you want to walk through what speed is? And actually, the speed and turn order, I misspoke earlier. So if you can go kind of walk through how speed determines turn order and break that down, that would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I didn't catch what you misspoke earlier. So speed is an important stat. And originally I was actually on the fence about even including speed, but eventually I realized it's actually an extremely good addition to the game, in my opinion.
Woohoo! That was my baby.
it was your baby. And I want to say the reason for that, I think, is because it really plays into how this game is different than games like Hearthstone or Magic, where since it's not turn-based, real-time turn-based, that's where speed really comes in to determine how everything works. And especially in those games, you have a big advantage if you go first, and Hearthstone added the coin mechanic, which some people might be familiar with, to try to balance that so the second player is not at a big disadvantage. But here, we don't have that, and that's where speed comes into play. So there is no someone who goes first and someone who goes second. It's a big factor into how you make your deck, or your team, I should say. do you have a team of monsters with high speed and possibly lower stats in other areas? Do you have a team that is mostly low speed and higher attack or health or whatever? Do you have a mix? It really adds another even additional element of skill to deck building. So how it works is this. Basically, you have two teams. They each have a bunch of monsters, and the one with the highest speed attacks first. That's how it goes, and then the next highest speed, and the next highest speed, etc.
Yeah, this is what I screwed up. I didn't screw this up on air. I screwed it up in the chat somewhere. I told somebody, well, Team A goes, and then their fastest member goes, then Team B goes, and their fastest. But that's not actually the case. It's you take all the monsters on the field, and you look at who's fastest, they go first, and then you look at second fastest, and which team they came from, it doesn't matter. It's just fastest goes first.
Right, exactly. So it takes out the whole, like, someone goes first and someone goes second issue, and how do you balance that? Because whoever goes first will have a big advantage. And, like, I feel like it was trying to fix that is kind of hacky, like giving the second player something or whatever. So now it's just, it all factors into how you build your deck, how you build your team, sorry. Which I think is exactly what we want, because this game is about building your team, and that's where the skill is involved. So, yeah, you just go down highest speed, next highest speed, all the way down to the lowest speed. And then if there's a tie, which there will be pretty often, magic attack goes first, then ranged attack, and then melee attack. And if there's still a tie, like two melee attack monsters with the same speed, then this is another area where some randomness will be introduced. And each round, it will be randomly determined which of those monsters attacks first.
That seems healthy. That seems normal.
Yeah, I think it's been, I've worked really hard on trying to make a cool and balanced game, but I've always had my doubts about how well that will turn out. And so far in my playtesting, it's been really good, actually. I've been able to, I'll put together some cards that I think might be good, and then I'll be able to go and kind of try some other teams that will eventually beat it. And I haven't been able to, make a team yet that's unbeatable at all. So every team that I've made has its strengths and has its weaknesses, and I can go and kind of think about, how do I beat this type of team? And all the different stats and abilities come into play there. So far, it's like, do I need to have a faster team in order to win? Do I need to have a team with more health or more armor? Do I need to have a different type of attack? Do I need to have certain abilities? So I'm sure, some things will come out that are a little unbalanced that we'll have to fix. But overall, so far, I'm really happy with how it's turning out.
So we talked about armor. Let's go into some of these abilities. We have flying. So what does flying do? So actually, I have two questions here. So in the stats page, we have flying, and it says monsters with flying will have a higher chance of evading melee and ranged attacks. And then with speed, it says a monster that has a higher speed has a increased chance to dodge, or I forget the exact phrasing, but there's not specific numbers in here. Can you share some of how that speed mechanic actually works, or how this flying, is it predetermined? Is it level based? Is it ability based? Like, what determines how much of a difference of higher chance comes into play when a monster has flying?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I purposely didn't include the exact numbers in the post. Also, partially because they might be subject to change, obviously, but also partially I just feel like, again, I wanted it to be more like you're in the world and you don't exactly know in a real world situation, like if someone's faster than me, do I have a 10% higher chance of hitting them or missing them and things like that. So we wanted to, I wanted to put out how the game works. Here's the mechanics. Here's the abilities. Here's the stats and all that stuff. But it's not like literally the exact numbers for the game, which I know some people want. But just keep a little bit of mystery here, at least for the time being. We're gonna publish all the source code for this, so it's verifiable and decentralized, and everyone can make sure that the battles are being run fairly. So you stats geeks out there will be able to go and see all the exact numbers. But if for the rest of us, I feel like it's kind of good to also have a little bit of mystery behind it.
A little bit. It can be healthy to just be like, oh, it's flying, so you're not going to hit me.
Yeah.
All right, so flying means I'm going to have a higher chance of evading melee and ranged attacks, unless the attacker also has flying. So I love little exceptions like this. Like, it just, little things like that make me so happy to be like, my favorite version of this was the armor one, where I'm like, so we were kind of talking through armor the first time, or maybe it's like we were having an evolved conversation about armor, and I'm like, so from what I'm understanding, you're telling me that if I hit and it has more damage than the armor, it's wasted. And you're like, yes, unless it has piercing. And I'm like, God, this guy is so awesome. This is like this is the perfect brain geekery that this community is going to want around this thing of like, building your perfect set of abilities and how they counter one another. It's all those little things, like it has a higher chance of evading unless the other one has flying. It'll it'll absorb all the damage unless you have piercing. It's that unless that makes this shit so awesome.
Yeah, I like. There's two things I really like to do. One is to make sure everything kind of has a counter. So the armor, is powerful because of that feature where it absorbs at least an entire attack. But there's two different counters for it. One is magic attack, and the other is the piercing ability. So I really like to make sure everything has some type of counter and is weak against something else. And the other thing, coming into flying, is I like to make things match with real life in as much a way as possible, which is also kind of how I tried to write this stuff, especially with how Selenia Sky and the Summoners work with the Splinters and why. And it's like, this isn't just like random things where we're putting in numbers and abilities just however we feel. It's like we're trying to make it somewhat actually reflect a real life battle, assuming this world was real and these monsters were real. So if I'm trying to attack a monster who is flying and I can't fly, that's going to be harder for me, right? He can just kind of fly out of my reach. Of course, if I also have flying, then that defender has no advantage because he can't fly out of my reach. So, that's where that comes from.
All right, so then we have Trample. When a monster with Trample kills its target, it performs an additional melee attack on the next monster in order on the opposing team.
Yeah, so, the idea there is like a big guy like Rexy. He's fighting a defender and he kills it. But he doesn't just kill it. He like tramples right over it and then, hits the next guy behind him.
Can Trample stack? So if I kill one, it can like Rexy go on a full team rampage. Can I eat the first, then eat the second, then eat the third?
As it is currently coded, yes. And that's something I'm keeping in the back of my head. It's a really rare, scenario, I guess, where that happens, but it would just be so cool, that one battle where your Rexy just kills 3 guys in a row.
Yeah, I could see that being a pretty awesome day. I'd fucking, like, send that video clip to everybody of just like, oh, hey,
that's what we want. We want people to post, like, those crazy battles, online, like, I just got my Rexy to just trample the other guy's whole deck. I want that to happen.
That would be hilarious. All right, next up we have Heal. Monsters with Heal will restore a portion of their health at the start of each round. So it looks like Heal is a self-heal. This is like an auto-heal, meaning like to that monster's own being. Is that correct?
Yeah, that one, doesn't require much explanation. It's just at the start of each round, it'll heal a portion of their health. And I'm trying to find some of the monsters that have it.
Does that...
one is... Go ahead.
Does it change? So if my monster has heal, will it always heal 1? Will it always heal 2? Is it reflective of how much damage they've taken? Like, what's some of the mechanic behind that?
As currently built, it is a percentage of the monster's max health. So a low health monster with heal might only heal one each round, but a high health monster might heal a little bit more. So I did it like that because that kind of equalizes it, right? So the heal ability always heals the same portion of the monster's current health. So if you use buffs or different things that increase the monster's health, that will also increase the value of their heal ability.
Cool. So group heal is next. Monsters with group heal will restore a portion to all friendly monsters' health at the start of each round.
Yeah, so that's the divine healer. Obviously, it's still certain support cards. That's just part of what they do and how they affect the battle. They heal the same percentage as the individual heal. They just do it to all monsters on the team.
Next up, we have Void. Monsters with Void take reduced damage from magic attacks. So, do you think that's a better tank ability? Do you think that should be on my support or off tank? Like, who do you see Void benefiting the most?
Yeah, that's definitely Void and Shield. I guess we'll just talk about those together because they're the same thing, just for magic versus the other two attack types. They're, I guess, mainly useful for tanks because the tanks are going to be taking the majority of the hits and the majority of the damage. And again, you can pick, based on the meta, which we're hoping will be very healthy, that if a lot of people are playing magic decks, a lot of people might start putting in some Void monsters and, vice versa with Shield. But it can also be helpful, on non-tank monsters because there are certain abilities and things where, the last monster on your team might get hit or a ranged monster on your team might get hit. So, if they have Void, then it helps them, stay alive and do what they do better.
And that to me is one of these decisions that people get to make. Do they think, what is the flavor of the battles these days? Are people magic attacking the tank, or are they magic attacking the squishies? And if they're magic attacking the tank, then you're going to want to pick decks where the Void is on the tank. And if the meta is that they're magic attacking the squishies, then you want to pick a deck where you're putting Void on your squishies. And so I feel like some of the strategy to this game is just kind of keeping up with current trends and then building decks around whatever is the current trend or the meta. Does that feel correct to you?
Yes, it's exactly what we're going for.
All right, so dodge. Monsters with dodge have a higher chance of evading melee and ranged attacks. Is that in line with the flying ability, or is that more powerful, less powerful?
It's basically the same thing as the flying ability, but it is more powerful because it doesn't have that exception of, if the other monster doesn't have flying. So dodge is just, regardless of what the attacker has or is, you have a higher chance of evading. And again, generally I'm also not always in favor of adding multiple abilities that kind of do the same thing. But again, I thought, in this case, it makes sense as far as like a realistic view of things, where some monsters literally can fly, and that should be an advantage. And there should also be a way for monsters that can't fly to have the ability to dodge attacks, because they're just, they're like, whatever. I want to find an example of one that kind of makes sense, but they're like the water elemental. So, he's made up of water. He can like morph and form. He's not a solid guy, so it's harder to hit him. So that's one example where I feel like the dodge ability makes sense in a real world perspective.
Now, what about down the road? Is it possible that I could have a flying dodging monster?
Sure, and I think there are some of those, and then that factors into that monster would then have to also be pretty weak in some other areas, because that's a powerful combination. But absolutely, I don't know off the top of my head if any monsters have both of those, but I would guess possibly.
All right, so next up we have poison. Monsters with poison have a chance of poisoning their opponent when hitting with a melee or ranged attack, which causes the poisoned monster to take damage at the start of each round. Poison directly reduces a monster's health. So I have two questions for this one. If I attack a monster and I hit it and I only do armor damage, does the poison still go through?
Wait, so say that again?
So imagine I attack somebody with high armor and I have low attack. So my attack is 1, but I have poison, and it has armor 4. My 1 damage brings it down to armor 3. Am I still hitting it with poison?
Oh, yeah, I got you. Yeah. That doesn't affect the poison, and poison also has a random component. So as long as you hit the target, even if you've only reduced their armor and not their health, you have a chance to poison them.
Now, once I've poisoned them, my second question is: does poison stack? So let's say I have 2 or 3 monsters that all have poison. The first one, it'll do damage for the poison. Does the second one increase how much damage that monster is going to take due to poison?
Currently, I don't have poison as stacking, but that's something I want to keep on the table. I just feel like, I don't know, I want to make sure it's not too powerful, and I've kind of given poison a lower value as far as the stats, and the value I've assigned to each of them for balancing, to kind of take into account the fact that it doesn't stack. But we'll see. I mean, if it turns out to be it's too weak, then that's something we can potentially add.
Well, and that also gets into you could have poison and stacking poison. So one that actually can, and maybe that's more expensive.
Yeah, that's possible. But for now, just we already have a lot. So it's just you're either poisoned or you're not.
All right, so stun. Monster with stun have a chance of stunning their opponent when hitting with melee attacks, which causes a stun monster to skip its next turn.
Yeah, this is a really powerful ability, and I've valued it highly. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So if I'm a monster that has stun, I hit an opponent, or I hit my target, I have a chance, there's randomness involved, of stunning the target, which means it loses its next attack, which is big, and that can, change battles based on that.
Next up is slow. Monsters with slow cause a speed stat of all enemy monsters to be reduced. So that seems like a pretty powerful one, if that's also changing who goes first and when people hit. Does slow stack? Can I have 2 monsters with slow and slow them down even more?
Yeah, so slow currently does stack, and I'm not that is one that I'm like, oh boy, that could be really too powerful. So we'll see. Not that many monsters currently have slow, so it may not be an issue at first, but again, this is, like I mentioned, that a lot of these things may end up changing, and this is the reason. Like, if it's just way too crazy powerful, and there's a deck that has a couple slow monsters, then we're going to have to look into that again.
Well, I'm also looking forward to when we get spells up and running, because you could have like a 1 mana cost spell that's like negate all slow. And so the deck that has all these slow creatures, and they've put a lot of their ability points into that, is now suddenly negated by a relatively low-cost card, but it really has limited function, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We don't have that right now, though, so, we'll see.
All right, next up. This is one of my favorite ones as well. It's Blast. Ranged or magic attacks do splash damage to adjacent enemy monsters. So I have a couple questions of splash damage is sometimes a whole attack, and sometimes a reduced attack, and sometimes a reduced attack that can still be dodged. So those are some of my questions, and then my other question is, what do you mean by adjacent? Like, if I hit the last monster because I'm sniping a squishy, will it only hit the guy next to it? Does it form like a full circle and also get the tank? So my questions are, for splash, who does it splash? When it's ranged, when it splashes them, is it a whole damage, half damage? Does it? Do they get a chance to dodge? And then, what do you mean by adjacent in this case?
Sure. So as far as the first thing is how much damage. It will be reduced damage. So it won't be if it there's a 4 magic attack on the primary target. It will be less damage done to adjacent monsters, not the full 4. If it's a magic attack, it will always hit the adjacent monsters. If it is a ranged attack, they will have their normal chance of evading or dodging it based on their speed and abilities. And as far as adjacent is concerned, in your example of sniping the last monster, it won't wrap around and hit the tank. It will only hit the monster, before it. And if it hits the first monster, then the splash damage will only go to the second monster. But there are monsters that have the snipe ability, which attacks the first ranged or magic attack monster on the opponent's team. So if that has blast, then it will hit 2 monsters, the one before it and the one after it. And again, just looking at kind of a real world scenario, if you look at these monsters kind of lined up, and there's a big like fireball that blasts, it will hit the monsters adjacent to it.
I'm pretty excited about that one. Me personally, I'm looking to go build decks around speed and blast because I think that would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, go for it. Be interested to see how that turns out.
All right, next up we have Inspire. Monsters with Inspire provide a melee attack boost to all friendly monsters. Is this mostly on summoners? Is that mostly on monsters? Who is a good fit for the Inspire buff?
Right now the summoners don't have any ability. So the summoners may provide a melee attack boost. It's not called Inspire. It's just they give +1 attack. We may change that in the future, but that's how it is for right now. So certain monsters have the Inspire ability. Ones that, again, I hope it kind of makes sense that they would do that. Like the pirate captain, I think, is one. He's a captain. He inspires his crew.
Bring me my brown pants.
Yeah, there you go. So it's a good thing to potentially have in your team. A lot of monsters have melee attack, and they get 1 more, which can be significant.
Now, what happens when my monster with Inspire dies? So my pirate captain dies. He got blasted by somebody with high speed and blast. And then, does that Inspire linger? Does it immediately stop having an effect?
No, it goes away immediately. If the monster dies, the other monsters are no longer inspired. So that's important. You mentioned your squishies and the support things. You got to protect them, because if they die, you lose their abilities.
Yeah, that's part of why I'm excited for Blast. Just take out all my squish. All right, so now Protect. Monsters with Protect provide an armor boost to all friendly monsters and makes them immune to fear. When I have the armor boost, is that a plus armor every round? Is that a one time at the beginning? How does that mechanic work?
Yeah, it's similar to Inspire. While the monster with Protect is alive, all the other monsters on the team have an armor boost, and it doesn't increase per round or anything. It's just they have it or they don't, and then when the monster with Protect dies, that benefit goes away.
So let's say I have no armor and I'm the tank, and Protect gets put on. So now I have 2 armor, and I get hit for 2 damage and my armor goes away. Will Protect bring that back in later rounds, or is it just that one time at the beginning I have that 2 armor that's additional, or however many armor it is?
No, it doesn't come back. It's you were given that 2 armor, and if it gets hit and destroyed, it's destroyed.
All right, so next up we have Fear. This one I feel like this has a chance to just decimate a team. Monsters with the Fear ability have a chance to cause their target to move to the last position of the enemy's team. This ability can only be triggered once per battle. So tell me about the sort of strategy with this, and sort of what that does to tanks with melee attacks.
Yeah. So fear, I think, is a good one. It's one we'll have to watch for potentially, being overpowered. But I really wanted to have some abilities that affect the order of monsters in a fight because that's so important to the outcome of the battle. So, we mentioned before that melee attacks can only be done, except with certain abilities. But in general, melee attacks can only be done from the first position. So if your first position monster, gets feared or scared, whatever you want to call it, and goes to the back, then it now can't attack until all the other monsters before it have died. But that's not like as bad as it might sound, because actually a good strategy I've found in some cases is to kind of put a melee attack monster at the back. He's sort of like an anchor, for your team. So, and he protects your squishies from monsters that have the sneak ability. So fear can also, it can go both ways. It can actually help a little bit depending upon how your team's built. So it's just another, yet another factor to think about when you're building your teams.
I'm pretty stoked for like a spell that would be the opposite of this, of like triggered, which would just force your last monster to rush forward as into your tank spot.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a fun spell to me. Like I really look forward to spells and fuckery, and that seems like perfect fuckery.
We will, that's definitely something we should do when we get there.
All right, retaliate. Monsters with retaliate when hit with a melee attack have a chance of performing a melee attack against the enemy monster that attacked them. So in fear, you mentioned specifically it can only be triggered once. Does retaliate, I can do that every single time I'm attacked with a melee attack?
There's a random chance of doing it, but it can happen any number of times in a battle. It's a really powerful ability, and it's sort of it gives certain monsters an extra attack.
All right, next up, enrage. Monsters with enrage will receive a melee attack boost when they are below full health.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, pretty self-explanatory. And I think, Hearthstone has a similar ability. It's, if a monster has 5 health and he takes 2 damage and he's down to 3 health, he gets, pissed off. And, now he's going to hit for more.
So is he, is the enraged... And I like that little, pissed off angry face dude, by the way. But if you're enraged, Rexy has an attack of 13 or something. If Rexy is enraged, does he get more rage bonus than somebody that's a little guy that gets enraged? Or is it kind of like a fixed amount of rage?
No, so first of all, Rexy's does not have an attack of 13. That would be a lot. It's currently at max level. It's set to 7.
Oh, it's 7.
Attack.
Sorry. Well, we'll go through stats, but it was a lot.
But yeah, he's one of the bigger, beefier guys as far as attack. But it's relative. So Rexy will have a bigger benefit from being enraged than a smaller attack monster.
Do I get more enrage benefit the lower amount of health I'm down to?
Not as currently designed. It's just you're either below max health or you're not.
All right. So these two next abilities, I think, are kind of unique to our game. A lot of these you can find elsewhere, but because we have this kind of positioning system where it's the tank in front and the melee, and that's your front line, and you can't really get to the other characters, and the only abilities that allow you to do that are kind of sneak and snipe. These two, I think, are very unique to the Steem Monsters genre. So I'm excited to have you kind of explain what sneak does.
Yeah, so sneak was my favorite thing here, and really I don't think this whole thing would work without these type of abilities. So like you said, the ordering is extremely important, and by default everyone attacks the first monster. But then it's super easy without the sneak ability to just place your support guys right in the back, and they can live there very comfortably and do what they do, and there's no counter to that, which is bad. So I originally came up with the sneak ability, which is where that's literally the counter to sticking your squishy support guys in the back. Certain monsters, and even if they only have melee attack, they can still attack the last monster on the opposing team and from anywhere. So typically melee attack monsters can only attack if they're in the first position, but if they have sneak, you can think about it like they literally are sneaking around in the battlefield to the back monster and attacking him, and no one even notices. So it really puts a lot of thought now into how you make your team. And I kind of mentioned it before, like there is some benefit to putting a melee attack tank in the last spot just to kind of, defend against the sneak monsters. And it comes back to the rock, paper, scissors thing. And one really cool thing I want to point out is if you put a monster in the back spot that has retaliate and he gets hit by a melee attack from a monster with sneak, he can retaliate and hit the sneak monster back. So it's sort of like a counter to the counter in that case.
Yeah, that's a nice little like off tank ability to sort of like put the off tank at the back and crush the guy that's like smiling his ass off, being like, "Oh, I'm gonna go sneak Yabba. Won't this be awesome?" And then you'd watch all of his like dinky little sneakers get killed by your off tank.
Yeah, exactly. So it adds another level now, counters to counters, and it gets awesome. And then so sneak was good, but I actually ran a bunch of battle simulations, specifically around the sneak ability, and it was still way too easy to hide other ranged or magic attack monsters kind of in the middle of your deck, which is sort of where they go because they're not as squishy as the support guys, so they can take a little damage. So you kind of put them in the middle, and I was like, they just sit there and you can't get at them anyway, and that was a problem. So I also added the snipe ability, which is only for monsters with ranged or magic attacks, and they, instead of targeting the first monster on the opposing team, they'll target the first monster with a ranged or magic attack on the opposing team. So it's a way to specifically, counter teams that are sort of hiding ranged attackers in the middle. And I look at it from, again, the real world perspective of you have a guy like, sitting up in a tower or in a tree somewhere watching the battle happening, and he's like seeing some archers in the back that are doing some damage, and he snipes them.
So, yeah, I love these two abilities. And actually, as I'm thinking through, like, if I could go... I know that we're going to do items and spells. I'm really looking forward to putting sneak on a Rexy. And just having Rexy trample through the back lines. I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah, we could have like an invisibility cloak or something.
Lets him sneak, or he just gets like a prowl ability, right? Like melee monsters can now go sneak into the background or sneak the back attack. I mean, I know we're getting a little criticism that it's not turn by turn, but fucking A, there's just so many choices that you can make ahead of time. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I want to talk about the not being turn by turn thing. So that's also just the first iteration of this. I would ideally really like to add some actual player interaction during the battle, and I definitely plan to do that at some point in our development. So it won't necessarily be turn by turn, but I had this concept of like substitutions, and this is not. It's likely not going to be out in the first version of fighting, but at some point I'd like to be where you can actually pick some substitute monsters with your team. So you make your team, you pick your monsters within the mana cap, then you can also pick maybe 3, substitute monsters. And then after you see your opponent's team and your opponent sees your team, maybe you then have a chance to make one substitution. And perhaps even later in the match, you have an ability to make another substitution. So just adding, some actual player interaction to the actual battles, and another additional element of skill to the game. And then, like you said, if we have items and spells, there's all sorts of other things you might be able to do during the battle versus all up front as it is currently designed. So anyone who's like, oh, it's all automated, there's nothing you do during the battle, I mean, that's just right now, but we'll definitely, I think, have some more things added in later on.
And frankly, but even without it, like, God, just thinking through how to make your team is, even at the alpha, without items and spells, it's already like you have a lot of choices.
Oh, yeah.
When we add in items and spells, like, there's a million, there's got to be more than a million. There's got to be like billions of combinations that you could put together.
Sure.
Especially as like we keep fluctuating what the mana cap is in any given PvP round or tournament or something.
Yeah, that's what makes it cool and exciting. There's just so many possibilities that you have no idea what people are going to come up with at some point.
All right, Magic Reflect. So let's go through, actually, Magic Reflect and Thorns. Let's talk about those two at the same time.
Sure. So, yeah, Magic Reflect, I've gone back and forth a little on how exactly it should work. But, you know, again, it's a counter to the very powerful magic attack, similar to Void. But the idea is that if a monster with Magic Reflect is hit with a magic attack, it actually sends a portion of that damage back to the attacker. Originally, I had it like reflect all the damage, and that was just way too powerful. So it's important to note that the defender who gets hit with the initial magic attack will still take the full damage, and then he will also send some of that damage back to the attacker. So I felt like that was a good balance between making that way too powerful.
What if the attacker also has Magic Reflect? So I cast a spell, it does 4 damage, the bad guy takes 4 damage, and then he reflects 1 back at me. If I still have, if the original attacker has Magic Reflect, will this keep bouncing at all?
It'll ping pong, but it does less damage, so it'll ping pong until it gets to 0.
That's hilarious. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Thorns. When hit with a melee attack, monsters with Thorns ability will do guaranteed melee attack damage. Is that if I have 2 dudes with Thorns, will that keep going back?
No, so Thorns is a little different in that respect, as in, it's like if you think about he's somehow thorny, so when I go to hit him, like, it hurts me a little bit. So it's not something where like you're actually like sending the damage back. So Thorns doesn't ping pong.
Does Retaliate ping pong? Or
Retaliate can ping pong if 2 retaliating monsters. And again, that's just RNG based, random based. So it'll, I mean, in theory, it could go on forever, but realistically, at some point, in theory, realistically, it will stop.
All right, Piercing. So we mentioned this a little bit. Melee or attack ranged damage beyond the amount of armor of the defending monster will reduce hit the defending monster's health, as opposed to normally where armor will absorb the entire attack. So we talked about it a little. Just give us one last kind of quick glimpse of what this does.
Yeah, I guess there's a little typo in there, which I apologize for. But the idea is that armor will absorb an entire melee or ranged attack under normal circumstances. So if a monster has 1 armor and gets hit for 5 damage, that 4 of those damage will be wasted and not do anything, unless the attacker has piercing. In which case, if the defender has 1 armor, it'll take away the 1 armor, and then the other 4 damage will hit their health, because it, you think literally pierces through the armor and hits the monster itself.
All right, 2 left. Weaken. Monsters with the Weaken ability will reduce all enemy monsters' melee attack and health. That sounds deadly.
Yeah, I mean, I put it on par with things like slow, and then there's, the kind of reverse of those is protect and inspire. But, it does a slight reduction to melee attack and health of all enemy monsters, which is, it's a good ability, definitely, and I value it highly. So we'll see how that turns out.
And then lastly, we have Resurrect. Monsters with a Resurrect ability will bring the first friendly monster that dies back to life with 1 health. This ability may only be triggered once per battle, and a monster cannot resurrect itself.
Yeah, so that's an unusual ability because I specifically put it in for the Angel of Light. The only ability that only one monster has. If you want to pull up the Angel of Light on the screen so people can see, that's kind of one of my favorite monsters actually in the game.
She's up, although I don't think she's max leveled, so let me hit stats.
Well, yeah, hit the stats so you can see. So
Flying,
the Angel...
Protect, Group Heal, Inspire, and Resurrection. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different abilities. She's a powerful little 4 mana cost lady.
Right, but no attack of any kind. So, she can't do anything, but she has like a big effect on the battle. Relatively low mana cost and relatively high health. So, and she has a special ability all for herself, which is Resurrect. And it's a really cool ability. So the first monster, whatever monster it is on your team that dies, I mean, other than the Angel of Light, obviously, can't resurrect herself, will be brought back to life with 1 health. Now, typically, 1 health, not that big a deal. It will just die relatively quickly. But if it's a monster with armor, it will come back with its full initial amount of armor, but 1 health. So in certain situations, it can work out really, really powerfully. Now, again, a counter to that would be a magic attack. A simple goblin shaman with its 1 magic attack can kill that monster that was resurrected. And it can only happen once per battle. But it's one of those, what I think is like really strong special abilities, but it does have some good counters.
How does that work with speed and turn order? So let's say I have, by the time I get down to my Angel of Light, or like my monster dies, but let's say it was high speed, the next person that's supposed to go, so like it dies, Angel of Light gets triggered, resurrects that monster, and it has, say, a 6 speed and it's higher than anybody else. Will it go first? Or is it punted until the next round of combat?
Right. So a monster is not able to attack the round that it's been resurrected. So if it has already attacked, if it's a high-speed monster and it attacks first in that round, great, it attacked. Then it might get killed later in the round. It'll get resurrected, but then it cannot attack again in that round. And similarly, if it has not already attacked in the round and it dies and it gets resurrected, then it still can't attack in that round.
Okay. Well, I think that does it for the for the abilities. All that took was an hour. I mean, there's not. Other than that, there's no choices to make.
Yep, that's it. It's very simple.
So we had a battle preview in there. So let's go talk about any one of these other ones that you'd be excited to. Should we talk through maybe some of these legendaries?
I have only like 10 minutes here, okay. So pick what you think you want to talk about, or whatever the group wants to talk about.
I like these. I like high speed things. So let's go talk about the lightning dragon. So I'll click into this, and all right. So it looks like at max level we're going to have flying, stun, thorns, and piercing. So what role do you think that that our lightning dragon will take? And then what was the deal about the having ranged attack and being in first position?
Oh yeah, I don't think we mentioned that. So ranged attack can't attack from the first position at all. So you want to make sure your ranged attackers don't end up in your first position. It's like the the archers that they end up getting into a melee attack thing and they're just like, I don't know what to do, and they just die. So ranged attack, they have to be further back. They can't like shoot an arrow at the guy like literally about to hit them with a sword. Is the real world example I give for that. And as far as abilities go, one of the things I tried to do, I tried to make the legendaries. They are a bit more powerful than the other cards of lower rarities, but I don't want to make them like super powerful in the sense that if I have legendaries, I will definitely beat people who don't have the same legendaries. So they're a little bit more powerful, but I also tried to make them cooler, which means like they generally have a whole bunch of different abilities, which I think makes them just like more fun to play in battles. So, you know, legendaries are slightly more powerful and, in my opinion, cooler. So as you can see, you know, the Angel Light we looked at had 5 abilities. The Lightning Dragon has 4. I think every single legendary card has at least 4 abilities, and no other cards have that many. So yeah, the Lightning Dragon is, you know, relatively high speed, ranged attacker. So you kind of put him in the middle or towards the back of your deck, and he's just like, you know, spewing lightning and trying to, you know, pick off enemies. And he has piercing, so if they have armor, doesn't matter, it goes through that. Thorns, you can see the actual thorns in the image. If someone, you know, attacks him, they're going to take some damage. He gets stunned, because you think if you get hit by lightning, you are probably going to be stunned in most cases, and flying because he's a dragon.
So he seems like a great off tank to me. You know, you literally stick him in the back. If somebody attacks him, he'll hurt you, and So actually, I have a question. If I have a dude with sneak, I send like the Kobold Miner after this guy. The Kobold Miner is slow, so let's say that he misses the Lightning Dragon. Will it still trigger things like Thorns and Retaliate? Are those kind of abilities on hit or on attempt?
They're on hit, and again, it's like if you miss the Lightning Dragon because he flew away from you, then you don't get hit by his thorns. And similarly, yeah, Retaliate is just on hit.
Okay, well that seems like a useful distinction to know here.
Yeah.
All right, so I got a request for Flesh Golem. So
okay.
I'm willing to. I can do that. He's a common green. I want to go talk about Rexy too, but here's a Flesh Golem. This one, it looks like his 2 abilities. That's not hovering right this second. I got 2, Void and Heal. So it looks like he goes from attack 3 to attack 5, speed 3, health 7 to 9, and then he has Heal and Void. So he actually seems like he could be another good kind of off tank, although he is a little expensive for an off tank.
Yeah, he's got a lot of health, like and the heal plus the health. Like sometimes certain abilities are sort of more powerful when paired with certain things. Like a guy with 3 health having heal is kind of a waste, but a guy with 9 health, which is, you know, one of the highest in the game, you know, with heal is actually pretty powerful. And then plus the void at higher levels where he takes reduced magic damage. Like, he's got a real good spot, again, depending upon the meta, to be there and soak up a lot of damage. And he packs a nice little punch on his own.
Yeah, so he seems like a healthy card. I mean, all of these really strike me as well-balanced, healthy cards. So we have 2 questions. So I see a lot of stuff about, hey, what's the difference between gold and normal foil cards? How are we going to treat those differently? And then I also saw Crystal was asking, are there entry fees to tournaments? So those are 2 sort of lingering questions that I actually see with some frequency.
Yeah, sure. You want me to handle those?
Well, yeah. Let's do it.
All right. So gold foil will have exactly the same stats and abilities. So there's absolutely no difference there. It's you know, primarily just, you know, to be a collector's item and to sort of show off what you have in battles. That being said, we do plan to have some gold foil only tournaments with potentially some larger prizes. So you know, having the gold foils and multiples of them to level them up will give you the ability to enter and do well in those tournaments. And then, you know, have a chance at winning those larger prizes.
Yeah, I keep thinking that my dream would be something like, if we can keep a sustainable amount of revenue coming in, you know, I've been saying for a while we'll do $1,000 tournament prize pools. Like, I'd love nothing more than to be able to do every week we can have at least one common foil $1,000 prize pool, and then also do one that's a $1,000 prize pool, but only for the gold foil cards. I think things like that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, who knows what other cool things the gold foil cards might allow in the future also. So sky's the limit there.
All right, so that's that one. What about tournament fees? So, like, one of the things that we're worried about is bot armies. You know, because if you can fight and you can get experience, then, you know, people have already built trading bots. They've built all these other bots. Somebody's going to build a bot to go do all this fighting so that every day they can go get some experience from tournaments or from other things. How are we planning on kind of combating bot armies that would otherwise, you know, give some players that use them an advantage versus the players that, you know, maybe aren't as specialized or don't do all this stuff all the time? How do we protect their investment in them?
Yeah, I mean, so there's always going to be bots, and we have to design these systems around that. I mean, it's all an automated game, so there's no issue or problem generally with people having a bot that, you know, that submits their decks. I mean, they still have to come up with the decks that they want the bot to run, so it doesn't. I don't think it really actually changes, and you know, it's still the same person.
But I could go. You know, if there's only one entry into a tournament, you know, I have 10 different accounts, I send in 10 different teams, and maybe I don't even care what those teams are. I just max up whatever mana is there and make sure that all of those monsters are getting some experience from having done that.
Yeah, so I mean, so the tournaments are going to be a decentralized thing. So anyone can run their own tournaments, and you mentioned about fees. So anyone who runs their tournament can decide whether or not it has fees. I mean, that's really the answer to the question. It's up to who runs the tournaments. Now, as to whether our tournaments, like official Steam Monster tournaments, will have fees, that's what kind of Agrod was saying is TBD. I would really like to make it so that we can do it with no fees. And I was thinking, you know, most of our tournaments wouldn't be capped, but you know, if I say we kind of see what happens a little. If we find like people are just making a million accounts and entering a tournament a whole bunch of times for the same person, then we may you know, look into that and may change that. But my goal is to not have fees. And then I'd also like to allow tournaments which are like invite only. So you know, you invite the specific accounts, like you need to have some type of invite code to actually enter. And then people can decide whether they want to charge for those or give them out or however they want to do it. So it's really just, we want to make it as flexible as possible to let people, you know, do whatever works best for them. And then the next thing I'll say, you know, with the current setup where fights are completely automated, yeah, it is totally possible to have bots do it. But you know, in the future, I mentioned having things like substitutions or spells, and that will be done actually during the actual battles. So if you enter a tournament, you need to like actually be there and watch what's happening and make decisions. In which case, bots will just, you know, lose, just like bots will lose in Hearthstone tournament. You know, they're not as good as humans. So I think, you know, down the road, it'll become less and less of an issue.
All right, well, that's the, as Rondon is telling us, we got about 2 more minutes. So I know it's your bedtime anyways.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to see some stats coming out this coming week here. You know, any last thoughts you'd like to add, sort of going into what I think is going to be another really exciting week for us?
No, I mean, it's just going to be really exciting. I think we're going to see a lot of people stopping selling individual cards and start combining them and leveling them up, because you actually see a benefit from doing that. I've personally, you know, always been leveling up my cards. So, you know, I'm looking forward to how that just changes the market and, you know, the whole thing. And I can't wait to see all the people streaming on DLive, you know, and DTube once the stats come out, you know, what they're thinking, what decks they think are good. And I was thinking we could actually take, before fighting's launched, we could take, you know, we could have people submit decks to us that they'd like to see fight, and we'll publish those fights so people can get an idea of how their decks will work before the fighting's live.
That sounds pretty good. All right, guys, you've been listening to MSP Waves. This has been the Monster Mayor Town Hall. We started with a little conversation from Bait on the Steam Exchanger. We've next had Yabba P. Matt, witness on the Steam blockchain here with us, and talking about Steem Monsters, the design, and where we're heading with this game. Hopefully you've enjoyed this interview format. And thank you, Yabba. I know that you're working your butt off just like I am and a lot of folks here are, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we come up with. I mean, I think the sky's the limit with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, good night, everybody. Thanks so much.
Night.